Before we begin, the following podcast talks about suicide. If you or anyone you know may be affected by this, there's a link in the episode notes to the Samaritan's website and phone number. At just after 10:15 in the morning, a man was led into a courtroom in Canada. He was dressed in a dark suit jacket and white shirt. It was Kenneth Law. It was the afternoon here in London, and I was watching on a video link in the Times podcast studio. The judge asked Kenneth Law to stand, which he did. A registrar from the court then began to read charges. Each was related to a person who had taken their own life after buying a lethal substance from Law. "I plead guilty," he responded clearly. Then the next charge was read out. Again, I listened to him say, "I plead guilty." This was repeated again and again. Each time was the same answer. I watched as Kenneth Law pleaded guilty to 14 counts of aiding suicide in the Canadian state of Ontario. It's not how I expected this story to end, and it's not how the father of Tom Parfett wanted this to end.
If it wasn't for Kenneth Law, Tom would still be here today.
Because this plea also has a big impact for those affected by Law's activities here in the UK. I'm James Beal, Investigations Editor at The Times. This is Poison, a podcast series about the suicide of a young British man and the questions it raises. I've followed the trail to Kenneth Law, and now, 3 years on, he's facing a prison sentence. Part 6. Aiding Suicide. In the last episode of this series, 2 years ago in 2024, I reported that Law was facing 14 murder charges related to the deaths of 14 people in Ontario after selling his poison online. Now, he struck a plea deal to have those charges reduced to aiding or abetting suicide. It's very rare to see this charge result in a conviction, but today, on Friday the 29th of May, it has. The charges he's pleaded guilty to don't actually involve the case which started this series. That was the suicide of 22-year-old student Tom Parfett, who died in October 2021 here in the UK after buying the poison from Law. This police investigation that has led to Law's guilty plea has only looked at cases in one province in Canada. The 14 victims were young, the oldest 36, the youngest still a child, aged 16. All took their own lives between November 2021 and May 2023. So what do we know about Kenneth Law? Law, now aged 60, had initially trained as an engineer and even spent some time in the UK, working in Coventry in 2004. But despite boasting a raft of qualifications on his CV, at the time of his crimes, he was working as a cook in one of Toronto's 5-star hotels. I recently spoke with a forensic psychiatrist involved in the police operation, who says Law claimed to have a girlfriend, but upon further investigation, she was understood to be an escort, and Law was buying her expensive gifts. Police have now confirmed that in his spare time, he was lurking on an online suicide forum, masquerading as a retired doctor called Greenberg, and pushing people towards his own website selling poison. As in previous episodes of this series, we are not naming the poison that Law was selling, as we don't want other people to find it. Police say when they arrested Law in 2023, he was simply storing the lethal substance in his suburban house, just outside of Toronto, buying it from China. Hey, Tom.
There we go. I think I'm in a better place now.
Great.
I drove down the road a bit.
Oh,
Sorry
thank
about
you.
that.
That's okay. I've called Tom Warfield. He was a police officer for almost 38 years at Beal Regional Police, the force that arrested Kenneth Law. He's just pulled over in his car to chat with me.
And I'm not, I've retired now from this, I'm a year retired.
Mm-hmm. 3 years ago, Inspector Warfield was in charge of the investigation into Kenneth Law.
And what I would love to do is just talk to you about when we contacted you guys back in 2023, how you guys chased some of these packages down that had been posted.
With Tom retired, he was happy to speak about their investigation. He says it started with one case.
We have a suicide death that the boys and girls are out investigating, right? The detectives.
Yes.
Then the family calls us and said, hey, there's something going on here. He purchased this package. We've got this evidence here. And we photographed the scenes. Like our forensic people have photographed the scenes. So we start doing some stuff on that. And we're like, let's have a look around. Do we have more of these? Like in our region?
Yeah.
And we do, right?
It was around this point in March and April of 2023 that we were getting ready to put this podcast series out.
So what happens is you reach to us, okay, the Beal police.
Yeah.
I think you said podcast. Something's going to go down.
Yeah.
I got in touch with the police in Canada to alert them to the podcast and ask some questions. This is normal journalistic process. Things like, were they aware a man called Kenneth Law was apparently selling a poison out of his house in Ontario?
What happens is when you did that, you turned up our volume. We had to move a little more quickly. We had to abandon what we were going to do and go into more traditional policing modes, meaning like surveillance, hard search warrants.
Tom's saying that when the police in Canada realised we were about to expose Law for allegedly selling a lethal substance, it put pressure on them to act. It turned up the volume, as he puts it.
We have teams that are watching Ken in case something happens. Like we don't want him to leave the country. Because your podcast has dropped.
Yeah.
He now will know that we're onto him. We had to get our evidence in place. Your podcast drops because we didn't want it to taint any witnesses. And then we had to make a decision. And that's why you see him originally, I don't know if you recall, but he gets arrested for 2 counts.
Yes, that's right.
In May 2023, I woke up to the news that Kenneth Law had been arrested just a week after this series had come out.
Okay, there's a reason why, is because we needed to get, for public safety, we needed to get him in custody.
Law's arrest at the time was for 2 counts of aiding suicide.
Just before that, and I'm so proud of these people, like it even gives me chills right now. The small group that we put together, there's me at the top of the triangle and then 2 other investigators, and we get some help from some other officers. We had to contact 1,200 people around the world.
When that initial arrest was made, officers revealed that 1,200 packages had been sent by Law to people in over 40 countries. Tom explained that the Canadian Postal Service gave his force all the addresses Law had sent his poison to.
James, our people spend the whole weekend trying to get a hold of every police, every country, all of them around the world through a police database called CPIC, which goes into Interpol, which sends messages around the world saying, a person in the UK has a suicide packet, this is the address, you got to go knock on the door.
At this point, Beal Police was simultaneously trying to get Law into custody and alerting other forces all over the world that some of their citizens may have a substance sitting in their home that could be used to end their life. He says his team went above and beyond.
And that's it. They don't sleep. We have to bring in food. They are at stress level 100 because there's a lot riding on it. Do you see the priority? The priority is preservation of life, not to go arrest Ken Law.
Tom went on to say that some members of Beal Regional Police were frustrated that our podcast series had come out, worrying that it would hinder their investigation. But 3 years on, he personally doesn't have any issues.
Like I said, everybody had a role to play.
Yeah.
What you did was fantastic.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Honestly, what bothers me, if you were asking my personal opinion, what bothers me is police departments, before the Beal Regional Police, before my little small detective team stepped in to do this, nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
If Surrey Police had called us and got a hold of someone like me, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, James, I'm not the special guy that blew this up with my team. What I'm saying is the people I had were in the right place at the right time, and Ken Law had no idea that these people would put their lives into this case.
I put Inspector Warfield's criticism to Surrey Police. They didn't respond directly to those comments. At the time, Surrey Police were aware of 2 suicides which could be linked to Law, including through the packaging the poison came in, with an Ontario address, the same address and PO box I tracked him down at in episode 3 of this series.
I don't know if you already had this insight, James, or not. So
No, I haven't. This has been absolutely fascinating. It really has.
I thanked Tom for his time and told him we'd keep in touch.
Speak to you later.
see ya.
Thank you.
See ya.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Now, this podcast series and my investigation began with the death of 22-year-old Tom Parfett. Tom was a university student who took his own life in 2021 after struggling with mental health issues. He was found dead in a hotel near London after buying the poison from Law. I never met Tom Parfett, but I now know his father well.
Let me just start this recording as well. There we go.
Well, welcome, David. It's great to see you again. How are you feeling today, first of all?
I'm good, thank you. I think in many ways it's a relief to be coming to the end of the Kenneth Law legal process. It's been years since he was arrested, and it's obviously been something that's been very much on my mind.
David's sitting in his home office, surrounded by books. Me in the podcast studio at the Times. David's taking a moment away from his day job in IT. He's 58 now, hair short and greying. David's calm and considered. He always has been in the 4 years I've known him now. He was the person that first alerted me to Law's alleged criminality back in 2022, when he was struggling to get the authorities to listen to him. So Kenneth Law has now pleaded guilty to aiding suicide in Canada. What is your reaction?
My reaction to him pleading guilty to assisted suicide is that it was more than obvious through the Times investigation that he was assisting suicide. I'm disappointed that he is no longer facing charges for first-degree murder. I know that if he hadn't sold Tom poison, then Tom would still be here.
How do you feel about this being kind of termed as a plea deal? Obviously, we don't really have them in the UK. They are more prominent in North America.
It's a situation that in many ways is unique, partly also because, of course, he's a Canadian who's being charged with deaths in Canada, or specifically 14 deaths in the province of Ontario. Therefore, he's not actually facing any charges to do with his actions for anybody in the UK that's been impacted by him. And this is one of a number of things that concerns me about basically the law and legal process is not really being modernised to cope with this wave of crime we're seeing from harms on the internet.
The 14 deaths in Canada that Law is guilty of aiding are all local to the Ontario region. But during my investigation, Law himself told us that he was posting his poison all over the world. He even bragged about it.
It's quite difficult as a parent knowing that Kenneth Law provided a substance to my son, and yet at the moment he's not going to stand up in court and face any charges. And James, I go back to you confronting him in Law's car and asking him about Tom Parfett.
I will leave your car.
Okay, thank you. I'll see you later.
Tom,
all right?
Tom Parfett died after taking your chemical. His dad, David, accuses you of effectively murdering his son.
Well, I'm sorry, right? I mean, if they have their intentions, I cannot stop them.
Anthony Jones.
I mean, perhaps you may want to stop people from buying knives.
Anthony Jones.
In the UK, you have no jurisdiction here. Goodbye.
Anthony Jones.
Goodbye.
The coroner in charge of Tom Parfett's inquest expressed alarm at how the poison was able to be imported into the UK from abroad. Tom's inquest is yet to conclude.
With the Times Radio News, I'm Rob Malarkey. Campaigners are calling for criminal sanctions against those who groom others on an online suicide forum after the site was fined almost £1 million for failing to comply with the Online Safety Act. Ofcom said the site was linked to more than 130 deaths in the UK and featured in multiple coroner's reports. The regulator found that illegal content encouraging and assisting suicide had been consistently present on the platform for the 12 months to April of this year. Now with the sport this morning,
Ofcom have recently announced that they've fined a suicide forum website £950,000 for not complying with the duties under the Online Safety Act to protect people in the UK from illegal content. This is the same forum you believe that your son used to find the poison from Kenneth Law. Are you happy with this Ofcom ruling, first of all?
I'm torn. Without doubt, it's a milestone that's been a long time coming, but does demonstrate that in the UK, if there's demonstrable harm caused by an internet forum, then we will take action. I think that's an extremely strong message, and I welcome it. But on the flip side, nothing's actually changed as yet. I still, within the last month, have found 2 other parents who have lost children. The Ofcom action does not solve this problem in any way, shape or form. It contributes to its resolution. It's a strong first step, but it doesn't solve this problem.
And these 2 sets of parents, David, can you explain a little bit more about, do you know what happened with these 2?
Yes, so unfortunately I do. And without wanting to give away any confidentialities, it's the same pattern as I saw with Tom. Both young adults who have been struggling with their mental health, who have started to use the same internet platform as Tom was using.
And these 2 cases that you're aware of, were they using Kenneth Law's poison?
One of them was using Kenneth Law's poison, which to me raises questions about how well the police have been able to act on the information provided by Canadian police and ensure that no harm would come from that poison. The other one, unfortunately, was using the same poison but from somebody else who supplied it. So it was using a different source, which again shows that the lessons that should have been learned from Kenneth Law haven't been learned, because there are other people that have stepped into his place and still supplying the same poison for profit. And going back to the Ofcom action, fantastic in the UK that there's a considerable fine, nearly £1 million. But again, the evidence is showing me that whilst that will make a difference, we are still not properly getting to the root cause that is still causing harm to people who are vulnerable.
This forum is where Tom Parfett was first alerted to the poison Law was selling and given information about the websites Kenneth Law was running that was selling the substance. The suicide forum's creators are based in North and Central America. It's not clear whether it falls under UK jurisdiction, which raises questions over whether the £950,000 fine could be enforced. One thing we know for certain is that people here in the UK are still logging onto the forum and getting the poison from different sellers. Coroners across Britain are still dealing with deaths in which this forum has played a part.
Unfortunately, I often meet new people who have been impacted by exactly that, and it's extremely hard to talk to those people because I lost Tom not far off 5 years ago now. I struggle because I know that there have been multiple coroner's reports before Tom died that basically said both the poison needed to be strongly regulated and also that the website was causing harm. I struggle thinking if people had taken action when these first warning signs were documented by coroners, then maybe Tom would still be here. We're nearly 5 years later, and we don't see any accountability to really get to the heart of this problem and make sure that it's addressed.
What now for you, David? You've obviously done a lot of campaigning work over the last 3 years, and whenever we speak to you, we're always struck by how thoughtfully and calmly you talk about this issue. But it's one, obviously, that's deeply personal to you, about the loss of your son. How do you cope with all this?
Probably not actually that well. I think anybody that loses a young son or a child to suicide, it's deeply impactful to your own and your families and their friends' health, and I'm very conscious of that, and I'm extremely lucky to have a very strong support network to, I guess, help with the lows. I guess as a consequence of what we did in terms of the investigation that ended up with Kenneth Law being arrested, thank goodness, because he was doing considerable harm, I find myself in a unique position that I can use my voice to hopefully prevent others from going through this, and that's my sole target. Unfortunately, there's still work to be done. From a campaigning point of view, I know instances of people dying. As an example, I know a couple who lost their daughter to a supplier of the same substance as Tom used, who unfortunately we know has been trading for years, but has been more careful than Kenneth Law. And yet the police force haven't even opened up an investigation into her death. And in the UK, the campaign group has called for a public inquiry, a statutory public inquiry, because, again, the government as a whole is failing to address the root causes of these deaths, and we can see that failure because other people continue to die.
While making this podcast, I went to various government departments and put David's concerns to them. The Department for Science, Innovation and Technology sent a cross-government response. They said, under the Online Safety Act, suicide and self-harm content is rightly treated as a priority, with platforms required to prevent people from accessing it. This recognises the serious harm that content can cause and the devastating impact it can have on individuals and their loved ones. The substance in question is closely monitored and is reportable under the Poisons Act, meaning retailers must alert authorities if they suspect it is being bought to cause harm. We will continue to keep dangerous substances under review to ensure the right safeguards are in place. Now, as we were putting the finishing touches to this episode, I got an update from the National Crime Agency and Crown Prosecution Service. They've told families that Kenneth Law will not face any charges or prosecution here in the UK. In letters sent to bereaved relatives, they acknowledged this may be painful to hear, but said this approach is not unusual in cases involving serious offending that crosses international borders. They also said it was a difficult decision. Instead, they've struck a deal with Canadian prosecutors, who say the judge in Canada will take into account the consequences of what Law did in England and Wales when they sentence him. We now know that Law sent 330 products to the UK and is linked to 79 deaths here. I called up David to get his reaction.
Hello, James.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
Look, thanks for speaking to me, David, this morning. We have obviously had the decision now from the CPS regarding the decision not to bring charges against Kenneth Law in the UK. How are you feeling about this?
Disappointed. For me, it was important that Kenneth Law faced charges related to the death of my son. I strongly believe that if it wasn't for Kenneth Law, Tom would still be here today. But also, I think really importantly, it was an opportunity for the UK to really set a leading position in how to deal with this type of crime, facilitated by an online platform, through people who clearly intend to do harm to others, like Kenneth Law. And it's a missed opportunity to really get under the skin of that problem and ensures that it stops happening.
Can you understand the decision at all, David? Obviously, there are problems or issues with extraditing people from one country to another. There are a large number of UK victims in all of this. Can you understand the decision that's been made at all?
No, I can't. And the reason for that is I believe that this case sets a precedent. And unfortunately, it will be one of several future cases that are similar. So again, the opportunity here was to not just ensure that Law was tried in the UK, but to really look at our legal process, to look at the law enforcement process as well, how these things are investigated and brought to prosecution, because we are going to continue to see this type of crime facilitated by internet platforms that's affecting multiple countries. And again, it's a lost opportunity to make sure that we truly get under the skin of what the root causes of these problems are and then start to work on them. I feel, unfortunately, there are people who, like Law, profit from the death of others, and they are still able to be active. There isn't effective legal enforcement. There are not effective processes to ensure that they are stopped immediately and brought to account for their crimes.
I've just come from a briefing with the CPS and the National Crime Agency, David, and the CPS during the briefing acknowledged that Kenneth Law is a serial offender who callously exploited many vulnerable victims, exchanging their lives for his financial gain. Does that bring you any kind of comfort at all that there is now acknowledgement of Kenneth Law's dangerousness?
No, it doesn't really provide me with comfort, because I still go back to the fact that if it wasn't for your investigation, Law would have continued to cause this devastation. That he was able to operate for almost 2 years. The death toll is astonishing, but what's more astonishing to me is when I listen to some of the families who've also been impacted and they talk about the people that they've lost. There's again this common theme that this was entirely preventable. My real concern is, although those words are strong words, I don't see them followed up with action to ensure that this does not continue to happen. So I welcome those words. I appreciate them. Again, it's a strong statement. But really, is that understood? And are those learnings being applied throughout policing and government today? And the answer is clearly no.
Thanks so much for your time, as always. We really appreciate speaking to you, and I hope you're doing okay today.
Thank you. Yes, I am. Thanks for checking in, James. And,
no worries.
Again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Good to speak to you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Kenneth Law will be sentenced later this year. This podcast helped expose him. He is now locked up, but other poison sellers have filled the void, preying on people's misery, turning mental anguish into a business opportunity. One seller, based in Ukraine, is linked to multiple suicides in Britain. Kenneth Law may be guilty, but it doesn't feel like a happy ending. Perhaps it never would. A recent study by medical professionals in the UK has warned of an urgent public health need to consider measures to prevent and mitigate the harms associated with this poison. In other words, they are calling for action. As David says, there is much more still to be done. I can only hope that people are beginning to listen. You've been listening to Poison, a podcast from The Times and The Sunday Times, with me, James Beal. The producer is Will Rowe. The executive producers on this episode are Dan Box and Kate Lamble, and sound design was by Hannah Varrell. If you or anyone you know may have been affected by this episode, we've put a link to the Samaritans website and phone number in the description notes of this podcast. And if you want to get in touch with me with any tips, my email address is also in the description notes. Thanks for listening.